The idea of doing a film came about first because I realised that in all the years that we've worked together, we'd never got any decent visual record of Sigur Ros. That kind of kernel of an idea burned away there for a couple of years without us doing very much about it other than talk about it. But then we got to thinking about it, and we felt probably 99% of people who listen to Sigur Ros have never been to Iceland, and there's this idea of what Iceland might be and might represent. And so 2 years before we did the tour, we came here on Midsummer's Day, and we drove to the other side of the island and we camped. We looked at the light levels and we decided that it was a good idea. It was actually quite cold, it being just short of the Arctic Circle, but it was very sunny and beautiful. Now, we adapted that idea because the band's show that we wanted to capture, the lights and the visuals are a large part of that. So we hit our first bump, which was that, okay, if we film when there's no dark, we're not going to see the show. So we decided to shift it another 6 or 7 weeks around the year so that we actually could play in the dark. So we had this free tour of Iceland, and people knew about the Reykjavik show and they knew about the Asperger show, but they didn't really know where else we were going to play. So we'd roll into town on a given day. So maybe the people who worked at the venue knew we were coming. When I say venue, I mean community hall, sort of place where they have a Saturday night dance. We slept in school classrooms. We slept on floors. We had a huge rolling caravan of vehicles travelling around Iceland. Ólafsvík first. Ólafsvík is a small fishing village on Snæfellsnes. We then got on a ferry and we went to the West Fiords because it's hundreds of miles to go by road. We managed to leave a guy on an island where the ferry stops in the middle of Breiðafjörður.
I think Simon's still on the island.
And we had to turn the whole ferry round. We just had a lot of people on it, hundreds of people on it, to go and get him again. So that was kind of funny. We then went to a place called Seladalur. Seladalur is not really a town. It's a little kind of outsider arts installation. Although as you go further north, you kind of expect it to get icier and sort of more forbidding, but paradoxically it gets warmer and sort of balmier, considering that you're in sight of the Arctic Circle. And the islands off the top of Iceland are actually within the Arctic Circle. And we went to Ísafjörð. Ísafjörð is a proper town in the West Fiords with quite a scary airport where the plane almost touches the mountains as it turns around to come into land. But we drove there, fortunately. And as this rolled on, there was like editorials in the newspapers, Morgunblaðið, saying, my God, what an amazing thing. So word of mouth had kind of spread out. So when we get to a place like Djúpavík, which is scarcely a place really, as far as I'm aware, there's only 2 people who live there year round, and you end up with a few hundred people turning up in this place that takes hours to drive to. The town itself was built on a herring fishing industry when there was a North Atlantic gold rush. We played in the deserted fish factory, and also we did one song inside a fish oil tank with a sort of big kettle element in the bottom of it. So if you can imagine how many herring they were catching to fill huge silos full of fish's oil. It must have been billions of fish. And now you go there and it's just a relic. It's sad and magical at the same time. Then we went to Halsun Oxnadalur, which is basically a farm in the Oxnadalur Valley. It's a field in the middle of nowhere. There's nothing there. Then we came back and we played in Reykjavik, and the weather forecast was bad, and our friend Hilmar Unn Hilmarsson, who's the head of the pagan church in Iceland, he commanded the weather to change. And the weather changed. The wind dropped, the rain stopped, and we had fine weather for our concert. So thank you, Hilmar. Reykjavik, I think, was the biggest ever concert in Iceland. And then we drove all the way around the south coast. We stopped at the Kirkjubæ cluster on the way, And the Kirkjubæ we played in the community hall, and we had a traditional thoroughblood meal, which is all the food that the old Icelanders used to eat to see them through the long dark winters. So rotten shark, sheep's heads, often preserved in human urine. Then we went to Seyðisfjörður. Seyðisfjörður is a big town in the East Fjords. If you get a ferry to Iceland, you land at Seyðisfjörður, so it's kind of a reasonably sized port town. In the east of the country, the Icelandic government has sanctioned the building of a dam at Kærnjúka, which was going to drown so many dozens of square kilometres of Icelandic wilderness in order to run an American aluminium plant that was being built by Italian labour. Not all Icelandic people, but a lot of young people seem to think that this was a criminal act. We drove past a police blockade and we played an unannounced concert to the protest camp up there. 3 weeks later, they started flooding it. It's now underwater. Finally, we went to Ásbergi. Ásbergi is a natural bowl. According to legend, is the footprint of Odin's horse Sleipnir, which is a six-legged horse. But I don't think that's how it was made. The volcano to the south, which is called Vatnajökull, which is the third largest ice sheet in the world, I think. It has a volcano underneath the glacier. The volcano erupts. It melts huge bodies of water under the glacier. They sit there until they can find a path out, and eventually it just pours forth in a huge, mighty river. And one afternoon, 25,000 years ago, it's supposed to have carved this valley, which is just, when you go there and stand at the bottom of cliffs that are maybe 150, 200 feet high, you just think, that cannot be. And we played at the bottom of this valley, and it was amazing. I think Iceland's history is for many hundreds of years, not very much happened. And now in the 20th century and into the 21st century, it's changed a lot since the Second World War with the establishment of there's been an American naval base here that left last year. And the influence of American culture on Iceland has been immense. And I think that Sigur Ros, whether consciously or unconsciously, are sort of connected back to a slightly older tradition of being proud of their heritage.